Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be talking about another upcoming nor'easter. This one could bring snow. Now, before I get started with this video, though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. Now, I'd also ask that you check out our very exciting Patreon page in the description and the pinned comment down below. Alright. Now, for today's comment of the day, I have an easy one. Do you think we will have snow from this system, or do you think that there will be quite minimal amounts of snow? Because we're going to see that there is a model here that is calling for a lot, potentially, so there's a lot of options on the table here. Comment what you think, and even if it's just a guess, I will be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now, let's get into this video, and first things first, we're taking a look straight at our European model here, and we're just taking a look at that precipitation map. As you can see, a giant trough is going to be entering the central and eastern United States. That's indicated by those blue lines. That's just indicating that much colder air is making its way down into those regions, in those blue regions. And you can see some precipitation building out in front of it, and that's what our nor'easter is going to build along once that reaches the east coast. So by the way, that was Friday morning at approximately 2 a.m. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to zoom in, and we're going to take a look at maybe Friday on about 12 p.m., so later after the morning and everything. We zoom in and we take a look at mostly the eastern United States, and we see some heavier precipitation beginning to build there for some of the portions of the southeast, the mid-Atlantic there, along the Carolinas and Virginia. We're seeing a little bit of some heavier precipitation. We're just going to build upon that later on, and that's actually what's going to become our nor'easter eventually. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're going to take a look at later on Friday. We're just going to take it in 3-hour increments and just watch this build and how it progresses. And eventually we're going to start to see some heavy snowfall along some of this. So before we move on, I just want to remind you this is one model and it's one run, so this could significantly change as far as the snowfall. These models have been consistently calling for a nor'easter now, so I'm quite confident that is going to occur this weekend. However, the snowfall portion of it is kind of where it gets a little iffy, because that's not very typical for this time of year. So if that was to occur, that would be quite crazy. We're going to need to watch this very closely. You can follow our Facebook page down below, where I update things much more frequently, obviously because it's easier to make a one-click post than it is to make an entire 10-minute video on a topic. So you will get much more frequent updates there. But anyway, here we are taking a look at our 2 p.m. hour, and you can see basically just the precipitation has gotten a little more heavy. So we're going to really quickly move on from that one. And by the time we're reaching 8 p.m. on Friday, this is where things start to change significantly. All along that front, we see heavy precipitation. So from the southeast, mid-Atlantic, all the way up into the northeast and portions of New England, which is extremely good news, by the way, because they are dealing with a very major drought up there, especially New Hampshire, a very lovely state, actually my favorite state in the United States. And I don't even live there, but it's a very beautiful place. And I'm very happy to say that you guys are likely going to be seeing a lot of precipitation this upcoming weekend. Again, I think I'm going to make a Facebook post specifically for New Hampshire later on, so if you live there, I highly recommend you check that out. And you can see some precipitation building offshore of North Carolina there. That's our nor'easter developing, actually. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're going to move on towards very late on Friday night, so maybe 10 p.m., and then we're going to start moving into Saturday. And on this next frame, we're going to see our first little bit of snow. So again, this is maybe about 10 p.m. on Friday, and as you can see, we're seeing some blue up there for the Adirondacks in New York, also a beautiful region. I don't want to just hype up New Hampshire. Also, the Adirondacks are extremely beautiful as well. And as you can see, very deep blue, because there is heavy precipitation in the area, so if it does get cold enough to snow, it would be heavy snow. And if it's going to stick is more of a bigger question, because of how warm the ground would be, how moist the ground would be. We're going to need to think about that later on. If it becomes more confident that we're going to see snowfall, obviously we will talk about that on my channel here. So rest assured that we will update you on that if it becomes more and more likely. Let's just take it to 2 a.m. on Saturday, so the next early morning, so just a few hours later actually, and you can see some heavier precipitation building offshore of North Carolina and Virginia. That's our low pressure center developing, and it's going to actually develop much further than that in just a little while. But you can see maybe even down to the Catskills now seeing some snowfall. So it's becoming more widespread as we get later into the night. The colder air is able to make its way in. So this is actually looking like a legitimate threat for some snowfall for the northeastern United States, and it seems quite plausible to me. I usually wouldn't mention something like this early on in the season, but with the extreme cold coming down, the nor'easter developing along it, I don't see why it's not possible. And we have seen heavier snowfall events for these very far northern regions before. It's just not as common. So let's go ahead and take it to about I would say this is approximately 5 or 6 a.m. on Saturday, and we're going to be seeing that low pressure center developing by this point. So you can see it's a 1003 millibar low pressure center, not very strong yet, but it's going to rapidly intensify actually. Take a look at Vermont as well. We're starting to see snowfall there. So now we're taking a look at the Catskills, the Adirondacks, and possibly the Green Mountains, the very northern Green Mountains. So wow, yeah, like very heavy snowfall, and with this long of snowfall, especially for the Adirondacks and then the Catskills, and then lastly the Vermont regions, you could start to see accumulation after 3 or 4 or 6 hours of snowfall. It's going to happen eventually if you see that long of heavy snowfall. What we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're actually going to zoom into New England in just a moment for about 8 a.m. on Saturday, where we're going to see that low pressure center start to get stronger and stronger. As you can see, we see much heavier snowfall for Vermont and much more widespread for Vermont throughout this time frame. So about 8 a.m. on Saturday, the colder air is right behind it moving in, and we can see we have a 999 millibar low pressure center there. Definitely a moderate nor'easter. I wouldn't call this a very strong one, but it's a decent one here. Not a weak one by any means. And we see the Catskills and the Adirondacks are still seeing a little bit of snow, but mostly Vermont now with that very heavy snowfall, where it starts to turn almost a purplish shade. There in those darker regions there in the middle of the blues, that's where we're actually seeing some quite heavy snowfall if this was to occur this way the model is showing. Even the Berkshires there getting in on some of the action, and right along that Vermont and New York border, as well as the northwestern Massachusetts and New York border. So if you're along that area, you are also possibly seeing snowfall by this point. I don't want to say for sure. Also note that New Hampshire is seeing heavy rainfall by this point, which is very good news. Let's take it to about maybe 12 p.m. on the same day, Saturday, October 17th. And New Hampshire starts to get on some of the action there for the snowfall, the White Mountains, and even down through possibly just north of Keene there. So the very western hilly regions of New Hampshire. That's a very beautiful region as well. A little bit more low-key, not bigger towns, smaller towns. If you live there, you obviously know, because you live there. You know more than me, actually, matter of fact. But if you don't live there, that's just a little bit of a I guess just a lesson of what New Hampshire is like. The very western regions are some smaller towns that are very beautiful and very hilly as well. That's probably why they're seeing this snowfall, is they're a little bit higher elevation out there, as well as the White Mountains, obviously. So we see that low pressure center is actually just offshore of New Hampshire and Maine there, still at a 999 millibar low pressure center, so just very moderate, I would say, and still very heavy rainfall coming into the southern regions of New Hampshire as well as the eastern regions. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to move on, and we're going to move on towards approximately 2 p.m. on Saturday, and then we're just going to take a look at the total snowfall, total rainfall, and even the total winds, according to both the European and the GFS models. So we're going to get multiple opinions here. So we're going to start talking about impacts after this. So here we are taking a look at about 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 17th, like I said. And you can see the precipitation is mostly tapering off, as our low pressure center is actually in northern Maine by this point as a 996 millibar low pressure center. So it's actually building a little bit further. So it's, again, still just like in that moderate nor'easter range, I would say. Pretty decent one, and considering we're in a La Nina, we've actually been seeing a few of these actually. Kind of unexpected, so neat to see this type of a pattern set up in a La Nina. Usually El Niños are a little bit more associated with nor'easters. However, we are still seeing them, so... and, you know, New Hampshire's not going to complain, as they're going to get significant amounts of drought relief because of these nor'easters we're seeing come through. At this point, we can see northern New Hampshire is seeing a lot of that snowfall, as well as the very western regions. I guess the northwestern regions of Maine are also getting in on some of this snowfall here. I would say if you're anywhere north of the White Mountains, so Berlin, anywhere like that, and also northeastern Vermont, the very, very northeastern tip of Vermont is still seeing a little bit of snowfall as well. Let's go ahead and move on and take a look at, according to our European model, which, by the way, has been the one we've been using this entire time, this is the total snowfall. So if this was to occur Not all of this would obviously accumulate because it's going to be quite warm and also quite wet at the time, because we're starting out as rain and then seeing the snow. As you know, especially if you live in these regions, you see rainfall, and then if it switches to snow, it's going to take a few hours of heavy snowfall for that to actually start sticking, especially if the ground is, above 32 degrees, or even the air. Sometimes you see snow at 35 degrees, something like that. It takes a lot longer, but we can see the Adirondacks. I guess the total snow, not the accumulation, but just the amount that you would see fall, is close to maybe a foot according to this model. Same story for northern Vermont and northern New Hampshire. I think the accumulation potential here is a good 3 to 6 inches, and maybe above 6 inches if we see a lot of this heavy snowfall like this model is showing. But I want to take this with a grain of salt for now and say that if any is possible, probably a good 2 to 4, 3 to 6 inches is certainly possible if it does play out this way. But we're going to need to move a lot closer to when this storm is hitting to be sure. Let's take a look at that total rainfall real quick. And as you can see, if you're in the greens, you're under half an inch of rain. If you're in the blues, you're a half an inch to 2 inches. If you're in the yellows, you're about an inch to 2 inches. And if you're in the reds, you're anywhere from about, I would say, 2 inches to maybe even 5 inches of rain. So we see that a lot of the New England states are getting close to that 5-inch mark. That's very good for New Hampshire. You could see a general 2 to 5 inches of rain according to this model. So very good news for the drought, and that would be significant relief, like I said before. Let's just zoom into New England real quick, and as you can see, you can kind of just pinpoint your region. The more southern regions of New Hampshire would be more around the 2.5 inches of rain, and I'm sure nobody's complaining because any rain is needed at this point, but the more northern and mountainous regions are a good 3 to 5 inches of rain, so a little bit more for those northern regions. And this is our accumulated maximum wind gust here. So this is basically the entire model run. So the entirety of the nor'easter, the maximum wind gusts any given region could see. And generally, it's those yellows and reds we want to look out for, because the yellows is anywhere from about 50 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts, which is significant, obviously. If you're in the greens, you're 34 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts, so that's still some stronger winds, but it's those yellows and reds, like I said, where we're expecting some stronger, more damaging winds. And last time we had a nor'easter come through, it did cause quite a few power outages, so we're going to be watching for that as well throughout all of these regions. The GFS is a little more conservative with the winds, as you can see, mostly just the yellows hitting Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and maybe coastal Maine as well. So we'll hope for the GFS solution, but also prepare for the Europeans solution that we saw before. Here's the GFS's precipitation forecast, by the way, just real quickly, and you can see it's also calling for 2 to 5 inches of rain for New Hampshire. So we have both models in agreement of that. That's very, very good news for you guys, to say the least. Anyway, for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, when do you think the Northeast will see its first snowfall? And Geneva Hodges said the New England states will probably have their first snowstorm at the end of October or the beginning of November. And it's looking possible that we're going to see that very, very soon in the middle to end portion of October. So good comment by Geneva Hodges. I certainly agree, at least for some regions. Anyway, for today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our diamond patrons Alicia Davis, Madbird, Cindy Klein, Dan Hazard, Mark J, alongside our platinum patrons Donna Carnes and Larry LePan. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.